Hey folks, welcome back to As a Man Thinketh on Yanasta TV. When I first saw the headline, over 1,600 ranchers incarcerated, I thought the same thing you did. That can't possibly be correct, but it is. Over 1,600 ranchers in Cuba have been arrested and charged and sentenced to up to 15 years for selling meat directly to the consumer. This is absolutely outrageous. The problem with Cuba is that socialism has gone to an extreme. We call it communism. Everything belongs to the government. At least the government believes everything belongs to the government. And so therefore, if you are a rancher in Cuba, you have to sell your meat through the government. You cannot sell it directly to a consumer. Selling it directly to the consumer is considered selling it on the black market, and you should be imprisoned for it. But Cuba has completely destroyed their agricultural sector, and they do not have the funds to rebuild it. They've destroyed their agricultural sector because of communism, communal ownership. There's always a queen bee. I don't care what you guys think when it comes to socialism. It always ends up leading to communism. I don't think people realize how close we came in the United States to seeing some of the same results that we're seeing in countries like Cuba.
I think I was, 22 when I started that work. I learned that with the swipe of my pen, I could charge someone with the lowest level offense. And because of the swipe of my pen, that person could be arrested. They could sit in jail for at least 48 hours. They could lose time from work, and their family maybe lose their job. They'd have to come out of their own pocket to help hire a lawyer. They'd lose standing in their community. All because of the swipe of my pen. Weeks later, I could dismiss the charges, but their life would forever be changed. So I learned at a very young age the power.
And while there's a bit of relief right now, I don't think that one man can stop what is going on.
But this is really important, this 2030 agenda. When they adopted this in 2015, the head of the UN General Assembly, this guy here, Peter Thomas, he said the 2030 agenda was the master plan for humanity. I imagine God had a really good chuckle about that. Right? Keep planning, see what happens. So that's their master plan for humanity. Ban Ki-moon, who was the Secretary General of the UN at that time, he said it was the global declaration of interdependence. And don't think that wasn't a swipe at you, right? They know our Declaration of Independence is the big obstacle in the path of their vision for the world order, in the path for their master plan for humanity. Just to give you some perspective on the 2030 agenda, I encourage you to read this. It's very short. You could probably, if you're a good reader, you could probably finish it in 20 minutes. At least 15 times, no one will be left behind. Okay? No one, and that includes all you great folks here in Georgia and your kids. Goal number 10, these are direct quotes. We got to reduce inequality within and among countries. So to do that, they say, it's only possible if wealth is shared, which means we're going to take your stuff and income inequality is addressed. And notice, it's not just within countries anymore. It's not enough that they're just going to take your money to Washington, D.C., and then redistribute it to their friends, their cronies, their bankers, etc. Now it's got to be among countries. So now they're going to loot the American middle class, at least what's left of it, and give it to the kleptocrats who've impoverished and kept in poverty the third world. And this is right in the text of their agreement, right? So wealth redistribution within countries, that's national socialism. That's not enough anymore. We now need international socialism. Straight from the text, they said they commit, every government on the planet agreed to this, we commit to making fundamental changes in the way that our societies produce and consume goods and services. And how do you suppose they're going to make changes to the way we produce and consume goods and services? Well, there's only one way to do it, the force of government, right? And that is exactly what they mean. Very much like Karl Marx said, the government should control the means of production, and then they'll control the allocation of the goods and services that result from the means of production that they control. They tried that in the Soviet Union. They tried that in China. They tried that in Vietnam. They're trying it right now in Cuba and Venezuela. Anybody thinks it's a good idea, I'll fly you to Cuba, come back in 6 months, tell us how it went. This is a really bad idea. Okay, we've seen this movie before over and over and over again. It always ends the same way. Concentration camps, gulags, starvation, shortages of basic goods, and an elite at the top that runs every aspect of your life. It's a really bad idea.
Now, if you're thinking what happened in Cuba was by mistake, you are mistaken. It is exactly what they wanted to have happen. The outcome of this communist regime is part of a much larger plan. They want to completely destroy the possibility of any concept of private land ownership.
So many of these, they have 17 sustainable development goals, so many of them impact farmers and ranchers directly. Goal number 2 says we have to have sustainable agriculture, sustainable food production, and we'll get into the meaning of that little buzzword here soon. Goal number 6 says you have to have sustainable management of water, especially in agriculture. And of course, who knows better how to sustainably manage their water than farmers and ranchers, right? What farmer and rancher ever said, hey, let's waste a lot of water? I mean, give me a break. The bureaucrats are going to tell farmers and ranchers how to be sustainable with their water? I mean, if you believe that, I've got a nice beachfront property in Kansas to sell you. Talk to me later. So goal number 12, we've got to have sustainable consumption and production patterns, especially in agriculture, and sustainable management and efficient use of natural resources. Goal number 14, we've got to get rid of marine pollution, which, by the way, comes from farmers, according to this document. Let's get to this sustainability term because it actually sounds really nice. It's kind of like a Rorschach test. Everybody sees what they want to see in it. But the UN has been telling us what they're doing for about 50 years now. Back in the early 1970s, the UN brought all the governments together in Canada, in Vancouver. And they came out with the first document that truly enshrined the sustainability agenda. It was called the Vancouver Declaration, the Habitat 1 meeting. And they said land cannot be treated as an ordinary asset controlled by individuals and subject to the pressures of the market. They said private land ownership, this is all in the agreement, is a principal instrument of accumulation and concentration of wealth, and therefore it contributes to social injustice. They said public control of land use is therefore indispensable. It's another way of saying essential or mandatory. So that land that you're ranching on, that you're farming on, that you think is your land, oh no.
When somebody asked me what I thought about the election results, I said, well, I'm relieved for the moment, but I'm also concerned. I'm concerned about what the next move is going to be. There is a movement for a new world order that will change everything if they succeed.
We've signed a climate convention on the importance of economic instruments and free markets. Were included in this mammoth Agenda 21 document and the Rio Declaration.
As this is known, presents us with an opportunity to follow up on the important work of the Earth Summit to develop its blueprint, Agenda 21.
The COVID-19 crisis has shown us that our old systems are not fit anymore for the 21st century. Now is the historical moment, the time, not only to fight severe virus, but to shape the system.
Folks, the forces that we're up against have been around for quite some time, and their strategies are constantly flowing. They're not going to stop because we elected President Trump. This is a battle that we're all facing, and we're going to have to continue to fight. It's a global battle. Over the past several decades, we've seen a massive war raged on farmers and private landowners. Look at Brazil, for example. Under the guise of a UN order or UN agreement with Brazil, Brazil went in and literally at gunpoint demanded that farmers dismantle their houses and leave their land.
Years. And I started getting information from friends of mine, some of whom are in agriculture. They said, hey, the government's stealing all our farmland. They're saying they got to give it back to Indians who supposedly lived there hundreds of years ago, maybe. And this was really an incredible thing. You have this Indian agency called FUNAI, and they were wiping whole towns off the map. They were actually sending police and military forces in there, some of them wearing UN costumes, and forcing these farmers to dismantle their houses at gunpoint so they could be herded into the cities. I've got a lot of videos of this from the news down there. It's all in Portuguese. You didn't hear a word about this in the fake media in America, but here they are. They're literally wiping these towns off the map, seizing millions of acres of the best agricultural lands in the world under the guise of giving it. See here, they're having to destroy their own houses. It is absolutely atrocious. This was 2013.
China. China is the UN's largest army. Think about that one for a second. China relocated 250 million people, or they're in the process of relocating 250 million people into cities. And what you see going on in China, here's the most disturbing part about it, is America 2050, the mega region plan, is modeled after what China is actually doing. You all remember what happened in Holland, right? With the Dutch farmers, the Dutch farmer protests, the European farmer protests. Well, look at what's happening right now in Britain. Britain just passed a 20% death tax on farms worth more than $1 million. That means if you inherit a tiny bit of land with a house on it, you're gonna have to pay 20% of that to the British government.
Well, it looks like another nail in the agricultural coffin from the new government. Now, if I understand rightly, listen, I've only had this, I'm on top of the mountain, we're gathering sheep at the moment. So it's 20% inheritance tax on anything over $1 million. Now, the majority of family farms, farmers are asset rich, but these farms are handed down to the next generation, hopefully so they can survive. Farmers are struggling how it is at the best of times without another added stress. The industry is on its bloody knees. It's on its knees with all the red tape, all the legislation, all the pressure, NVZs, TB. In Wales we got SFS. And now we have a Labour government that puts 20% on anything over £1 million. And, it sounds a lot, but, what is it? A 2-bedroom flat in London? It's £1 million is the majority of family farms, the majority of them. So, a lot of them are worth a lot more with their machinery, the land. Everybody needs a house to live in. The farmhouse, again, will be handed down to the next generation. These people have worked hard and paid their taxes all their life, and try to build and keep food affordable. And I think that's really important. If we're not keeping food affordable for the masses, again, there'll be more people coming out of the industry. There'll be more people, that are taking their own lives. There'll be more mental health charities because people are absolutely at the lowest ebb. And then this comes. I don't get it. I really don't get it. It's very, very frustrating, for an industry that's working its socks off to keep people fed. Yeah, another nail in the agricultural coffin. I can see a lot of people selling up, getting out. And where's the next generation coming from? I can't see them. Average age of farmers, 67, and it'll be rising. Nobody wants this job anymore. Nobody wants to come into it because of all these legislations and all this red tape and all this added stress and strain. Absolutely bonkers. Yeah, absolutely bonkers. Can't get my head around it.
20% of $1 million. A lot of farmers struggle to get by. A lot of these assets that are passed down from generation to generation don't make a whole lot of money. While they might be worth a lot of money, they do supply an income to those who own it because they're able to farm it. But what they're able to farm it for isn't enough to pay for $200,000 for every $1 million in value. So what you actually have going on in Britain right now are farmers committing suicide to pass their land off to their heirs before the law takes effect.
I've just come off the phone with the man that found his father hanging in the shed before the inheritance tax law came out the day before, and I had a long chat, and he's explained how the stress and the strain had got to his father, and it's a very, very sad time, so some people have been asking the question, is it, a hoax? But the whole reason he's kept anonymous is to protect his children, and which I really really get behind. But for the people that didn't believe it or asked them questions, I can tell you categorically that is not a fake, that is not a hoax. It's 100% true. And my condolences and my heartfelt messages from everybody that goes out to this family. Hope you can pull through this. And I hate to say it, I don't think you'll be the first or the last. It's a very, very serious and very, very low ebb for the industry with everything that's been thrown at them. So I think governments really should be looking at themselves and what they're doing to the countryside, to farming families, and to the whole economy.
This is absolutely horrific. And when they bring this up in the British Parliament, here's what they have to say about it.
The Minister decides to not answer.
Is the Minister, the Secretary of State and the Chancellor aware that so serious are the consequences of this policy that the heads of farming families in their 80s and 90s are seriously considering committing suicide before this policy comes into place?
I don't need any after comments, Minister.
I find it hard to respond to a question like that. I spoke earlier about using language carefully, and I would just reiterate that point.
That's right, they ignored it altogether. This is a moment in history that we're never going to forget. Here in America, over the past year, we've seen attacks on private co-ops. Those are private organizations where informed consumers can buy food from ranchers and farmers. We've seen attacks on ranchers, legal attacks against ranchers, threatening to throw them in jail for up to 20 years. We've seen a record number of food and safety recalls for suspected Listeria and E. coli. And I'm not saying that some of those haven't been justified, but I am saying that we've seen a record number of suspicion bringing in millions, tens of millions of pounds of meat, driving up our food prices. You've had BLM doing reappropriations of land all over the United States, taking land out of valuable range programs. And you've seen this carbon bank system develop that is taking over a lot of our farmland, basically financing the repurchasing of farmland from farmers across the United States. The transfer of water rights is something we talk about a lot on our channel with the uses of eminent domain and purchasing of water rights and taking away from the agricultural sector. And then, of course, we have the natural disasters. My point is you think, when you see this headline over 1,600 ranchers, that it doesn't apply to you because it's Cuba. Folks, you don't realize how close we came or how close we actually are. There's a lot that we have to do to improve this country from this point forward. We need to open up the markets. We need to allow farmers to have more access to selling directly to the consumer. These are all things that were packed into the Farm Bill. These are all strategies that would work. And that's precisely why I think that they haven't passed a Farm Bill. We have a lot of work to do here, folks. So while I am relieved at the state we are currently in, I have a lot of concerns. I actually have a lot of concerns over what's going to happen over the next 2 months because the gloves are off. There's no politician to blame. Biden is heading out the door. Trump is coming in the door. We have global wars popping up all over the place. My question is, what's going to be the next move? We may have won this move, but what's going to happen in the next move? And what can we do to help unite and support farmers around the world? Farmers that are losing their lands, losing their equity, losing their lives because of the deliberate destruction that's going on. It surprises me. We have a Hurricane Helene Relief Fund for the agricultural community. We've raised $2,000 so far. The amount of people that watch these videos, if everybody just gave up their coffee for a day and donated $5, we would be able to help rebuild those agricultural communities and strengthen us. We can't leave it all up to one elected official. They are not the ones that are going to be able to do it all. We are. My hope is that we'll see some big policy changes, but in the meantime, even then, it's going to take more than that The forces that we're up against are extraordinarily powerful. And when you think you've got them defeated, that's usually when they have another plan right up their sleeve. And I have a feeling, given the fact that nothing else has worked, their next step is going to be unexpectedly aggressive. And that's just my opinion on it. I think that at this point in time, desperation is going to sit in as 2030 approaches. In the meantime, we need to unite and stand together. Now that the elections are over, let's start thinking about people again. Let's start thinking about our farmers. Let's start thinking about our future.